What if Tank Davis, who can punch, who is a hell of a fighter, who is a top 10 pound for pound fighter, what if he lands a punch on this bigger guy's chin, right? Who's not a professional fighter? What happens?
But if they do it for real, Tank is highly capable of taking Jake Paul out. So the exhibitions that I like to see are ones that either I can mythically look at and say, wow, well, if he would have did that back when he was 10 years younger or 8 years or 12 years ago, he would have beat him. You understand me? Because we know boxing.
Which if he hits you because he's so accurate, he's gonna drop you or could put you to sleep. But like not necessarily power punch. Like Edwin De Los Santos is a hard hitter. He would even have a hard time with rollies. I'm not even kidding.
Boxing legends break down why Gervonta Davis would destroy Jake Paul in just 3 rounds. Gareth A. Davis explains that Gervonta stayed quiet during the press conference and face-off, barely reacting to Jake Paul's taunts about his height. He notes that Tank seemed hesitant, almost as if he was pushed into this fight. But once the bell rings, he believes Davis will explode with fast, brutal combinations that silence Jake completely.
Went about the presser.
He reminded me of a northern football fan being dragged to a shopping centre on a Saturday afternoon rather than being allowed to go to his favourite Liverpool seat. You'll relate to that, won't you? It was almost like he'd been shackled and dragged there against his will. Even when they faced off, it was as if Jake Paul had a bad smell about him or something. He didn't want to get near Jake Paul. He didn't want to. I'm just going to plug this in as well. I just realised it's not plugged in. It was almost as if he didn't want to indulge anyone at all. Like he'd signed up against his will, and then. Like he'd been signed up against his will. The agents and his manager and his handler had dragged him there without briefing him on what was going on and where it would be and what time it would take place. And there was this oaf in his mind standing there in front of him, this big oaf who kept posturing, and it just didn't do anything to him. I wondered at one point whether he was going to burst out with a combination of punches or something and just drop Jake Paul, who was being, measuring him up and going down to his height, and it was all very peculiar in my view. Like he really wasn't taking it seriously.
Ryan Garcia doesn't hold back his frustration over the Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis matchup, and he sees this fight as a mockery of the sport he's dedicated his life to.
Mainly Jake's, and we're not falling for the Disney Channel bit no more. We're not falling for you're not a fighter no more. We're not falling for that. You're ranked as a cruiserweight and you're out here trying to fight a lightweight. And then on top of it, you were just talking about fighting Anthony Joshua. That doesn't make no sense. And, I just felt like it was a disgrace to boxing and kind of it was not a good move by Jake Paul. I understand people saying, Gervonta got to go get his money, blah, blah, blah. But, we're not talking about that shit. We're talking about the sport, bro. We're not talking about, you got to get that money, bro. Yeah, but everybody's open to criticism. That's the whole point of this media shit. Right. That's why they talk about basketball players. They don't talk about, LeBron's making too much. Nobody cares, bro. If LeBron's missing the shot, he's missing the fucking shot. So at the end of the day, bro, I just thought it was a disgrace to the sport. Because on one end, you got the casuals, right? The casuals don't see the weight difference. They see Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis. Yeah. And if Gervonta Davis doesn't fuck up Jake Paul, they're going to think Jake Paul is some pound-for-pound champion type of fighter. Yeah. And to me, that's just it's tricking the public, and it's kind of bullshit, bro, at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, if Gervonta was Jake Paul's size, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. There probably wouldn't even be a fight. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I just think that it's a disgrace to boxing.
Well, we got to play devil's advocate because people were saying, well, Ryan, you called out Jake Paul before too, so how would you say that? What do you have to say to the people that were saying that to you?
Well, I'm way bigger than Gervonta Davis. Gervonta Davis is 5'4", and his last fight was at 133. My last fight was 147, and I walk around 170. So, 170 to 190, whatever, however big is not too much difference. But you got Gervonta Davis, he's actually really small. Like when I fought him, he's small. Yeah. So I just think it's a very unfair fight. Nobody was complaining when Jake Paul was fighting Julio Cesar Chavez.
Right.
Nobody was complaining when he's fighting Anthony Joshua. And I still think Jake Paul's a cool dude. But shit, he's calling me out on my shit. I'm gonna call him out on his shit, bro. That's a fucking disgrace of a fight.
Yeah.
You know it. Just like the Mike Tyson low key was a disgrace, but we accepted it. But
Yeah.
he was 60 years old. I mean,
Right.
what the fuck are we talking
he's
about
60.
here?
That's crazy.
Sean Porter views this matchup through the eyes of a veteran, calling it a reflection of where boxing is heading. He says today's generation seems more focused on quick paychecks than long-term greatness. In his view, Gervonta Davis has joined the list of fighters chasing money rather than legacy. Porter explains that legends of the past risked their records for glory, fighting the best to cement their names in history. Now, many fighters prioritize brand deals, social media fame, and short-term profit. He insists that Tank is one of the most talented fighters alive, but says is wasting their potential on sideshow events instead of true championship battles. Porter doesn't just blame Davis. He blames the growing trend of money-driven matchups that are slowly eroding boxing's soul.
Why are you doing that? How do you sort of see this scenario now for him?
Yeah, I don't really know how to feel about it, what to really say about it. I've only been asked this when it's presented to me. That's when I think about it, and I can't really come up with a good answer for it. In a lot of ways, it doesn't make sense to me. Of course, we know the size differential, and the list goes on from there. I don't know, man. I think we're entering a generation now, or a phase now where fighters, I don't know. I don't know if it's fighters. I don't know if he doesn't care about the legacy, or if he feels like this fight doesn't matter. I'll get back to the legacy. I just don't know. This is truly not. It's not a legacy fight, but of course it is a generational money fight, so.
Many analysts argue that the problem isn't just with the fighters, it's with the audience itself. They claim the modern fan base feeds the circus. Real, technical bouts between elite boxers often go unnoticed, while exhibition and influencer fights dominate headlines. They blame social media's short attention span for shifting boxing's focus from substance to drama. The analysts say the Jake Paul phenomenon isn't his fault alone. It's the audience rewarding chaos over craft. When fans tune in only for trash talk and viral moments, serious fighters lose the motivation to take risks for respect. They also point out that this fan-driven trend has blurred the line between professional bouts and entertainment acts. Real champions fight for belts. Influencers fight for clicks. And as long as fans keep buying those pay-per-views, the balance of power will stay in favor of spectacle over sport.
Thing has evolved to where it's at. I'll expand on that. For one, you have good fights where I'm not talking about these type of fights, crossover type of fight, former Disney guy, influencer stuff. Not. And Jake Paul has really promoted himself and acquitted himself to the point where he's kind of a boxer. Now, he hasn't fought the top names. I get it, blah, blah, blah. But he's doing his thing. He's training like a boxer. He's not like taking it lightly, like streaming and then working on his YouTube more than he's working on his boxing. It is what it is, right? But beyond that, let's keep it going. I told you I'm about to really get unpacked. Subscribe to the channel. The reality is, the reason why I'm saying I blame you, the fans, is because we've had some very good fights, like David Benavidez, Caleb Plant, whatever. I'm talking in the last 5-10 years, right? Very good fights, all boxing. So not talking influencer or any type of crossover fight, right? Good fights. And then you got boxing fans in a niche sport who didn't further the exposure by advertising or buying the fight, mostly buying the fight with piracy and whatnot. So now we're at a point in this society where these companies, they're like, all right, they see the piracy is a problem. Now they're looking for sure shot, must win type of scenarios. That's why we're getting these fights that some people, purists and diehards, are calling wonky fights. You know what I mean? It is your fault.
One major concern shared by professionals is the massive size difference between Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis. Jake naturally walks around at cruiserweight, while Tank's true division is lightweight. Analysts stress that even though Davis is far more skilled, The physics of boxing still apply: reach, weight, and power matter. They warn that putting Tank against Jake in a sanctioned fight would be unfair and potentially dangerous. Jake can absorb punches from much bigger men and keep swinging, while Tank, despite his knockout power, will have to close distance against someone far taller and stronger. Critics argue that such mismatches